Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 6, Episode 11 of AMC's Better Call Saul, entitled Breaking Bad. This is one we've all been waiting on for a while. We heard coming into the season that Walt and Jesse would appear at some point. I think the episode title kind of gave away that it was going to be this episode, but nevertheless, the title revolves around, I guess, the return of Walt and Jesse, but more so how Walt and Jesse, the interactions with Walt and Jesse, have shaped not just Jimmy/Saul's life, but now even Gene's life in Nebraska. But before I get to that, I want to talk a little bit about expectations for this episode, just because I was a little concerned, knowing that coming in this was going to feature Walt and Jesse. I was concerned with and I don't know why I feel bad for doubting this Gilligan Gould group here, but I was concerned that it would feel like a shoehorned in cameo, like, oh, we got to have Walt and Jesse for some fan service, and it wasn't really going to fit in with the rest of the show. It wasn't really going to have an impact on how this story is going to end for Jimmy/Saul/Gene. I was concerned it might be like a weird kind of like bottle episode where the events of it have no impact, because I'm like, well, it's got to be like a flashback to bring in Walt. How are they going to tie something with Walt into present day Gene storyline? And just I feel like an idiot for even doubting them. They managed to successfully pull off a reintroduction of these two characters and still have it tie in to what we see with Gene in this episode and what we're going to see with Gene in the final two episodes, because this episode also does a great job of setting up the final two episodes. You know, up to this point, I've been like, what are they going to do? There's this much left. And now I can see what's the remainder of what needs to happen to Gene playing out over the course of two episodes for sure. So really great stuff there. So I want to start by talking about the opening scene, because I thought this was really cool. It's actually several scenes, but this opening scene, we see Francesca. She's working at like it seems like she's like a landlord or something, and she has these two like weed smoking tenants and whatnot. And this is post this moment in time seems to be like right after the end of Breaking Bad. Francesca's clearly kind of like, not necessarily on the run, but trying to stay low key. She's being followed. She knows she's being listened to. She lists like, I've got, my phone clicks when I pick it up. I got people following me. She knows that she's being watched for any clues on Saul. And she ends up, and this is actually a nice callback to a previous episode of Better Call Saul. She ends up not meeting with Saul, but she ends up meeting with him via phone call at this rundown gas station in the middle of nowhere at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And there's a callback to a previous episode where Saul told her, hey, if this happens, be at this place at this time. And it felt kind of like a one-off, and I think we're meant to deduce that this is where she was told to be at. And this call is pretty much a catch-up call. It's done to make sure that they can that Saul can know what all is going on as it pertains to what the media, what law enforcement is looking for as it pertains to him and Walt and Jesse. And Francesca fills him in. She tells him Skylar got a deal. She tells him Huel is alive. Second most important thing she tells him is that he lost all of his money, all the accounts that he thought he had, like everything's gone. So he's got no money other than what he took with him. And then lastly, she mentions that Kim called and wanted to know whether or not he was alive. And this seemed to encourage him. Like, a guy that felt like, oh man, this is such a bad situation. I don't know what's going to happen here. This whole shit with, everything going down with Walt and Jesse, because we're very close to the end of Breaking Bad here. So he's got to be very distraught about everything that's just taken place. And now a moment of encouragement. Kim, who presumably he has not heard from, they have not spoken, presumably over the course of the entirety of the Breaking Bad storyline. They presumably haven't talked. So for him to get that message that she was at the very least interested in him or thinking of him seemed to be really encouraging. And then he calls this place called Palm Coast Sprinklers in Florida that apparently she works at. And this ends up with what I thought was a really great scene where he makes the call, he asks to talk to Kim, and then the camera pulls out of the phone booth, and we see him from, almost feels like across the street, and we end up zooming back in during this conversation, but we see him looking very agitated during this conversation. He looks very intense, very contemplative, like whatever he's hearing is not pleasing to him, and then he ends up blowing up, and we see him like smashing the phone booth, whatever happens, he's pissed. And I think we can all kind of theorize about what he was told on the phone. I feel like he didn't talk to Kim. I feel like he was told something about Kim, but at the same time, I'm like, why would he get that mad if he's just being told something about her, other than being told that she's dead? But I don't feel like you don't kill off Kim off screen like that, and then even have him find out without hearing it, like, and make it as some sort of cliffhanger, like what happened to Kim, what's gonna happen with Kim, what caused that phone call, especially considering not what caused that phone call, what caused his reaction on the phone call, especially considering that he could potentially be in legal trouble. But we'll get to that in a moment. I also want to talk about briefly, and I don't know if do I want to tie this in a little bit later? I might tie it in a little bit later, but no, I'll talk about it now. I loved how we get both a thematic and visual representation of how Kim pushes Jimmy to become Saul. So if you think about when Kim breaks up with Jimmy, however many episodes ago that was, and we hear her zipping up the suitcase behind the closed door. After that, we cut to Saul timeline, and we see Saul full fucking Bluetooth, got all the women on deck, leaving her the Nutri-Grain bar or whatever that was. But we see a very clear visual representation of Kim hurts Jimmy, Jimmy goes full Saul. And then now we see it again here in this episode where Kim hurts Jimmy through whatever way, whether it's purposeful, whether it's via her absence, whether it's via whatever takes place. After that phone call, we now see him become Saul in the Jean storyline. And I think that's an interesting place. It's like, okay, we see her do that in the Better Call Saul storyline, and now we see her do it in the Eugene storyline. And it comes off very much, when I say it's his, I'm referring to Jimmy's desire to become full-on Saul. Like, full-on piece of shit, scamming people no matter who it is, no matter what the circumstances are. Full-on piece of shit Saul. She triggers that, and we get to see that visually, and I thought that was kind of cool. The fact that we see that in the sense of, like, I think we're meant to understand that this is how Jimmy kind of, like, processes his pain that's too deep to process in more traditional ways, like getting drunk. He processes his pain with Kim via these heartless, slipping Jimmy Saul Goodman scams. And I think that kind of provides context to everything that we've seen with him up to this point. How he manages most situations very coolly and calmly, but these situations with Kim that haven't gone the way that he would have hoped push him into this almost kind of like ruthless scamming nature, this extra over-the-top Saul persona. So I really enjoyed seeing that, and I enjoyed getting that little bit of visual representation of how Gene is coping or not coping, depending on how you look at it, with any pain that surrounds Kim. And he clearly copes with it very unhealthily, and I think that we're almost kind of meant to assume that things are going to end very poorly for him. Like, the things with Kim go bad, he turns into Saul, things go worse. And I think that's kind of where we're headed as well. But moving on to the Gene storyline, we see Carol Burnett again. I thought Carol Burnett was going to be like a one-off last week, but No, we are reintroduced to Carol Burnett as she's introduced to cat videos on YouTube. And we see Jeff again. And this is after the phone call that I just mentioned. And Gene has decided that he wants to get back into scamming. And he decides that he's going to recruit in Jeffy again to help him with the scams, even though he told him to cross the street when he sees him coming. And Jeff seems excited to be back in on these scams. And essentially what we see is a scam of working over like rich douchey guys. The first guy we see is I'm pretty sure is the guy that played Buzz in Home Alone, all grown up. That's the first guy we see at this bar where he wants to make all these bets. But essentially the scam is that Gene talks up these rich guys, gets them all drunk. He doesn't actually drink. He has a mechanism from his sleeve that he feeds the alcohol from his cup because he keeps his hand over the cup glass. And he feeds the alcohol into this pouch. And so he doesn't drink. He gets the other guys drunk. He sends them home in a cab driven by Jeff. Jeff takes them back to their house. The other guy, whose name I can't remember, the third guy, they put tape on where the doorknob catches with the jamb. That, the part that you turn to get into the house, the doorknob, the part that pulls into the door when you turn the knob. I don't know what it's called, but it's an attachment on the doorknob. They put tape over that part so that the doorknob can't fully close into the jamb, so they could essentially just push the door open. And they go in there, they take the guy's wallet, they take pictures of all of his cards, all of his information, any important documents, and they give those pictures to some guy. I'm assuming some guy on like the dark web or something, which is probably like a startup at this point. And he takes the photos and gives them a shit ton of money. And they run this scam over and over and over on a bunch of different guys. And what I like about this is that we see just how fully Jimmy is in these sequences. And what I mean by that is when we get to the last guy, the guy with cancer, who I'm going to call him Big Bang Theory because I recognize him from Big Bang Theory. He played Stewart on there if any of you guys watch Big Bang Theory. But the last guy, Big Bang Theory, he has cancer. And there's a very interesting moment. And I think this is a tell for what Gene's action is going to be. But once he finds out the guy has cancer, he seems kind of briefly broken up about it. Like, oh man, I'm scamming a guy with cancer. And they get fresh drinks. Jimmy toasts his drink to the guy. And he's holding it like this. And I think he probably feels so bad that he's going to actually drink with this guy and call off the scam. And Jimmy sets his glass back down, and then he puts his hand over it. And I to me, that read to me as, fuck this guy. I don't care if he has cancer. This scam is continuing. And because I really thought he was going to drink with him. And I think that the show wanted us to think that from the way he raised his glass. It's fully uncovered because he keeps his hand on it the whole time so he can drain it. He has his glass uncovered. He's toasting it. Seems to be kind of broken up about the cancer. And they draw out, I feel like, at least it felt like to me, him placing his hand back on the glass as if to say this scam is still happening. And then he puts the guy in the cab. And he watches the cab drive away with this look of like disgust. Like, oh, fuck this piece of shit kind of guy. And I'm like, what a weird read of this guy to show this look of like disdain almost. That Gene is so just so without any kind of sympathy or compassion that he would look at this guy with cancer as like not just a victim, but as someone to be like pitied or disgusted with. And I'm like, how does this even work? But what ends up happening, and I think this does kind of pay off, is the stuff with Walt and Jesse kind of shows us that essentially Walt ruined cancer patients for Jimmy. Like, like he looks at cancer patients and he thinks of Walt. And you hear this in the conversation that he has with Jeff and the third guy whose name I can't remember. He says something like, cancer patients can be assholes too, something to that effect. And that's to let us know that his situation with Walt made him so just like have no like no sympathy for cancer patients. Like normally I might think like, oh, this guy has cancer, let me not be a piece of shit to him. And then he thinks of a guy like Walt and he's like, you know what, fuck people with cancer. And it's like that's so shitty, but like they've earned that the ability to give Gene that assessment, given everything that's happened with him and what we see in this episode, including the unseen moments between Walt and Jesse after the kidnap staging that we see in season 2 of Breaking Bad, which was ironically titled Better Call Saul. And we see a casual convo in the RV. Jesse asks about Lalo, which I think was interesting. We see the discussion of the plan to keep Walt out of jail, which we saw this play out in Breaking Bad, but it was essentially like we pay some old jailbird $30 to $30,000 to essentially take the fall and be Heisenberg, and Jimmy gets 50 grand for setting it up, which is why they say something they mention 80 grand somewhere during this RV drive. But yeah, the Walt and Jesse stuff seems to really show just how traumatizing that was for him. We see the moments after the interaction that we don't see before, and it really did kind of feel like just, hey, let's bring Walt and Jesse back in. They could have done the same thing and given the same vibe without even having Walt and Jesse there. We could have made that connection for how his time with those two has colored his behavior as Gene in these final moments of the season and of the show. But they brought Walt and Jesse back in, and it was fine. It was cool to see him, whatever. But I like the fact that I was completely wrong about what they were going to do with Walt and Jesse. And it really was kind of inconsequential that they were there. It was like, okay, here's some cool stuff. We get to see them post. We get to see a portion of the interaction between the three of them that we didn't see before, and that's cool. But they kind of use that as a way to take that Walt, Jesse, Saul collective and remind us of how, not remind us, but tell us, but also remind us of how that interaction has shaped the guy that Gene is today and that Saul is, and all that kind of good stuff. So really interesting stuff there. I'm really looking forward to what they're going to do now, because like I said at the beginning, it seems like they're setting up these final 2 episodes to be kind of like the fallout of Gene running up on this cancer patient. Like, is he going to go in there? He's going to get caught. He's going to get arrested. Is Kim going to have to come be his lawyer? Is Kim even alive? Like there's so much to figure out. I read an interview with one of the writers on the show, and they flat out said, like, we wouldn't have ended Kim's storyline like that. Kim deserves better than that. So I think they're going to bring back Kim in some way to give some closure to that storyline as well. But 2 episodes to essentially deal with how Gene, having whatever conversation he had surrounding Kim in that phone booth, how that pushes him back into becoming Saul, and how what he does confidently as Saul, because we see him just like, he doesn't give a shit, man. He's making a bunch of money. He's got all the women. He's got his Bluetooth. He's full on Saul. How that ends up playing out for him, and seeing how this plays out for this character, where Jimmy became Saul, Saul became worse version of Saul, and then he has to come down and become Gene, and then Kim pushes him to become Saul again. Like, how is this going to end for him? And playing this character who is just intent on getting in trouble. So I guess we'll see how this plays out. I'm really excited for these final 2. I thought this episode was great, really intriguing, really fun to watch. A couple of thoughts before I wrap up. When I say great to watch, I loved a couple of the shots in the Gene storyline. I love the shot of him walking out of the phone booth after the conversation with Francesca. He's standing outside the phone booth. You see this place was called Big Pat's, the sign behind him. Great shot there. I love the bird's eye view of the intersection before he goes back to call Kim. Really great stuff there. I mentioned that Francesca is like a landlord now. I love the interaction with her and the tenants at the beginning. How they call her Narca, the Spanish, the female version of narco. And the guy says conjugate much. Oh, I love that, because it was like, you wouldn't think you would hear something like that from those 2 guys. A joke about conjugation. Before I wrap up, there is one thing I had kind of a problem with. I thought it was way too cute how they had Mike slandering Walt in the scene that Mike shows up in. We find out that Mike ends up not working for Saul because he works for Gus, but doing essentially kind of like PI work for Walt, spying on people, giving him information and whatnot. And he asked about Walt and Jesse, and Mike overly talks down Walt like he's too amateurish. He's like, it's way over the top, and I thought it was kind of corny that they kind of did this like nudge and wink kind of thing. Like, look how little Mike thought of Walt, and we all know what ended up happening. Ha ha ha! LOL! Elbow you into the ribs. Like, come on, man! Like. And then Saul being all encouraging, like, no, I think he has real potential. Like, that was so corny, man. Like it felt very much like they were just playing up the idea, like, hey, look how funny this is. How Mike had thought so little of Walt, and how Saul saw potential, and then look what ended up happening. Like, that was too cute. I didn't really care for that. But other than that, really great episode, really exciting, really interesting. I really enjoyed how they kind of had everything come full circle between the Breaking Bad episode called Better Call Saul, this episode called Breaking Bad, giving that visual and thematic representation of how Kim pushes him to become just like, not even from like slipping Jimmy kind of thing into full on Saul, like Saul, like not just by name, but like that full piece of shit Saul who doesn't care who he hurts on his way to scamming. How Kim pushes him into that. Great stuff. I love the catch up with Francesca telling everything that happened post Breaking Bad events. So they tied up a little bit of those, a little bit of like Breaking Bad, not even loose threads because we didn't need that information, but a little bit of people wondering post Breaking Bad what happened to Skyler. Quick little tie up of that, that thing to give you some sort of closure there. And now it looks like we're set up to see Gene's fallout with this cancer patient and how that's going to affect what's going to happen with him. And then we also see Saul walking into what I believe is the bar that he first did that scam on with Buzz from Home Alone. We see Saul walking into that in the sector last shot. I wonder what's going to happen there as well. So let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you guys next week for the penultimate episode, episode 12. And until then, peace.